Have you ever wondered what it takes to lead a country when it's literally at war with itself? Well, today, we're digging into the life of Abraham Lincoln. He was the president who faced that exact, almost impossible challenge, and in the process, he changed the United States forever.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with Lincoln's incredible journey from a tiny log cabin all the way to the White House. Then, we'll get into the crisis that was tearing the nation in two. We'll look at how he led during the war, explore a decision that completely redefined freedom, and finally, cover his tragic end and why his legacy is still so powerful today.
So how does a boy born in a log cabin become the president? Seriously, Lincoln's story is like the classic American tale, rising up from really humble beginnings to the highest job in the entire country.
Just look at this timeline for a second. It shows how unbelievable his journey really was. He was born in a one-room log cabin. And get this, he had less than a single year of actual formal schooling. But he loved to read, and he basically taught himself everything he needed to know to become a lawyer, and pretty soon after that, a politician in Illinois. It's just a huge reminder that education is so much more than what you learn in a classroom.
You know, as a lawyer, Lincoln's sense of fairness earned him that famous nickname, Honest Abe. But that reputation for integrity, it wasn't just some catchy phrase. It was actually a key to his success. People trusted him, and that trust, it was going to be absolutely essential in the incredibly tough years that were coming.
All right, now let's turn to the enormous challenge Lincoln faced when he finally stepped onto the national stage, a country that was, quite literally, on the verge of breaking apart.
At the heart of the whole problem was slavery. The country was split right down the middle. The industrial North was mostly against expanding slavery into the new Western territories, but the agricultural South, its economy, its entire way of life, was built on the labor of enslaved people. You just can't have a more fundamental disagreement than that, and it created this deep, really dangerous divide.
And right into the middle of this powder keg steps Abraham Lincoln. When he got elected president in 1860, a lot of people in the South saw it as a direct threat to their way of life. For them, it was really the last straw. One by one, Southern states started to secede, which just means they decided to break away and leave the United States.
Well, that tense standoff didn't last very long. In April of 1861, Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter, a U.S. federal fort in South Carolina. And with those first shots, the political crisis just exploded into an all-out war. The American Civil War had officially begun.
So, just like that, Lincoln is a wartime president, leading a country that's fighting against itself. I mean, how did he possibly handle that kind of incredible pressure? This really was the single biggest question of his presidency. Lincoln had to be way more than just a politician. He had to be a commander-in-chief, a motivational speaker, and pretty much the guardian of the entire American experiment. You know, his leadership style was this really unique mix of strength and compassion. He was known for being incredibly patient, for listening to all sides of an argument before he'd make a big decision. He even used humor to kind of diffuse tense situations in meetings. And he had this deep empathy for the soldiers fighting the war. He would often visit them in hospitals just to offer a word of comfort.
Okay, so we're 2 years into the war, and there is no end in sight. And that's when Lincoln makes a really bold and, at the time, very controversial decision. It was a move that wouldn't just change the course of the war, but would completely redefine what it meant to be an American. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This was a presidential order that declared that all enslaved people in the rebelling Confederate States were now free. Now, it's super important to note, this didn't free everyone all at once, but it was an absolute game changer. The war was no longer just about keeping the country together. It was now officially a fight for freedom itself. And the impact? It was huge, and it was fast. The proclamation also allowed Black men to join the Union Army. Nearly 200,000 African-American soldiers, many of them formerly enslaved, took up arms. This gave a massive boost to the Union's military, and these men were now fighting for their own freedom. At Gettysburg, the site of one of the war's absolute bloodiest battles, Lincoln gave his most famous speech. In just a little over 2 minutes, he completely redefined the war's purpose. He reminded a grieving nation that they were fighting to make sure that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. After 4 long, brutal years, the Civil War finally came to an end. But the joy of that victory was incredibly short-lived, and it was replaced by a tragedy that would shake the entire nation to its core. Just look at this timeline. It shows the absolute whirlwind of events right at the end of the war. Lincoln gets reelected in 1864. The main Southern Army surrenders in April of 1865. The nation is celebrating. But just 5 days after the war ended, the unthinkable happened.
While he was attending a play at Ford's Theater, Abraham Lincoln was shot and killed. The man who had saved the Union was gone. A nation that had just started to celebrate peace was now completely united in grief.
So why do we still talk so much about Abraham Lincoln today, more than 150 years after his death? Let's break down his enduring legacy.
Well, for starters, he kept the United States from breaking apart. He led the charge to end slavery. And he became this global symbol of democracy and freedom. From the penny in your pocket, to the $5 bill, to the massive carving on Mount Rushmore, his legacy is literally all around us, a constant reminder of his incredible impact on history.
In the end, Lincoln's life leaves us with this timeless question. How do you lead through a massive crisis and unite a people who are deeply divided? His story offers a really powerful answer. With courage, with compassion, and with an unshakable belief that you can always build a better, more perfect union. And that's a lesson that is just as relevant today as it was back in his time.